I am Rebecca Lewis Pankratz. I'm from McPherson, Kansas, which is pretty much right in the center of the state of Kansas. And I got to come here with the amazing people from ESDAC.
Oh, yeah.
So, they just keep bringing me along and teaching me new stuff every day. And so my day job, though, I work for a nonprofit called Circles. So I get families out of poverty permanently. So I work with families. Initially, they come to an 18-week class, and then they stay on for 18 months to 5 years to get out of economic poverty. So, yeah, most of the families that I work with come in making around $10,000 to $12,000 a year, and we bring them to 40, 50, 60,000. That's really the transformation that we're seeking. And of course, you guys, I don't have to tell you, but it's all about building relationships. And the other important part of the work that I do is really helping communities, education, clergy, healthcare really wrap their heads around poverty and what it takes to really get families out. Families want out, they just need wrapping support to find their way. And so,
and working with the folks from ESDAC, that's
pretty incredible. Yeah, pretty incredible. So
how does that work? How do you take someone who is making $10,000 or less a year and helping them get to the point where they are making a living where they can actually support themselves?
So families come and we go through an 18-week class, and we really study economic classes and the way that economic class systems think. And so poverty, middle class wealth, not any judgment in that, just really kind of defining that. And we start to talk about going from concrete survival thinking into more abstract planning kind of thinking, and really meeting families with dignity and curiosity and saying, hey, we think that in our communities, we see families struggling, and we really feel like poverty is the root cause of it, and we want help solving it, and we need the experts that are living it to help us. And so, meeting people, bringing them into the process and saying, you guys are the ones that have the answers that we need. And so, I mean, and learning things from our families. And I know so much about this because I bumped up against Circles as a single mom with 3 little boys from the trailer park, trying to claw my way out, and had been for a long time. I'd been in college for almost a decade trying to get a 4-year degree to be a teacher.
Yes.
And so bumped up against this nonprofit and just realized that I was missing a ton of information.
Sure.
And then, so after these families go through this 18-week class, and they make a decision to stay on for 18 months to 5 years, and they get matched with middle-class friends called allies. Okay. We meet every week. I currently work with 40 adults and 40 kids.
Wow.
So, and Circles is across the United States. I think there's 80 chapters, and so there happens to be more Circle sites in Kansas than any other any other state. It's just something that has happened organically.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the work that I do is incredibly intertwined with school systems, community, families, and really getting parents to the process of their child's future.
Sure. Yeah. Man,
so your session
amazing.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
How long do you have?
15 minutes.
Yeah, we're doing one tomorrow too, but we're on PBL. So so give us a brief elevator pitch. You have 45 seconds. What's going to happen?
Really starting to ask the question, why do we have so many kids born into poverty, and how come the best of what we're throwing at this, we're not seeing the results that we want in our country? And also, how do we put better equipment on educators and give them some more insight so that they can find the compassion that they need to meet families where they are? Because educators get beat up, and and I know, because I wanted to be a teacher, that we spent one day in my teacher ed track on what they called low SES, and it was actually 1 hour. So I've been in front of 8,000 teachers to this point, and out of those 8,000, 16 have said they've had something put in their backpack to prepare them for their first day of teaching for the culture of poverty. So we're not helping teachers with very good equipment and strategies on how do we reach these kids, how do we reach their parents.
And most of our teachers never experience that.
Most teachers are generationally middle class.
They never experience that, so they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle the children from that experience. Parents, and that's the juggling.
That's the juggling piece. So
So I mean, you said earlier you had mentioned that really you bumped up next to Circles because your background. I mean, you were in the situation. So how did you use Circles, or how did Circles help you get to where now you are a part of Circles? I mean,
Yeah, I was missing
that's an amazing story.
I was missing a ton of information. What's funny is that I have been wandering around a four-year institution for a long time. So I was in a middle-class world. I was in a middle-class framework,
Right.
but in survival mode as I was going through those processes. But I was missing the connection piece. I was missing the information to close the gap. And I was really walking blindly. And so when I bumped up against Circles and we started to talk about the way people in middle class think, the way people in wealth think, the way people in poverty typically think, I was like, all this stuff started to dawn on me. And I realized that I had been coming at a middle class process from a trailer park lens. And that was why I was having all these struggles, because I didn't have anybody to show me the way.
Sure.
And so, it wasn't that I was defective or not intelligent.
No,
it was
right.
that I didn't. And so we think about that with our, I heard a woman just share, everybody in education wants the same thing. They want kids to get through high school and hopefully go on to something. And, how do we, and so those are just interesting conversations for me. If I was bumping up against these middle class norms that I didn't understand as an adult, what of our young people, what kind of,
Sure.
so that's not my problem to solve, but I can put the question out there.
Yes. Man, it's amazing, and it sounds like it's very incredible work that you're helping these families be able to move into the middle class.
Into the middle class, yeah.
And as you just said, help them understand the different mentalities of those different classes. I don't know if you're familiar with any of like the Ruby Payne work and that type of stuff, and she's real big into helping, and really, at least from my experience, it's almost been the opposite direction, helping folks who are middle class understand how folks in poverty think about money and
Time,
yes, exactly.
relationships.
Yeah, relationships.
Yeah. And
Their role in the group. Yeah.
so we have our families, they stay on for 18 months to 5 years, and they get matched with middle class allies. And so our allies, we always say Circles is a flat experience, a flat organization. The allies aren't mentors, they're just friends, because the allies honestly have as much to learn from our families
Sure.
about what poverty is and what it isn't, as our families do about what middle class is and what middle class isn't. And so
Right.
it's this huge opportunity for us to just cram our worlds together and grow bigger.
So part of that growing in education obviously has to be tied into jobs that are available. I mean, and so do you have like business partnerships? How does that?
Yeah, when you look at any kind of human model, you really want those pillars involved. So you want your faith and your education and your nonprofit and your business sectors and your city government. You just want kind of those people, those players at the table, because that's really what it takes to solve incredible issues like poverty in communities. In McPherson, Kansas, where I'm from, we have a good job base, and we have the most successful Circle site in the country.
Wow.
And the biggest Circle site in the country. But in New Mexico, Circles is working with, I want to say it's the Department of Transportation in New Mexico,
Okay.
and they're looking at doing something with a place called Digital Works. So they would bring in, open up a center with childcare attached to it, because they're in these small ghost towns. And how do you do economic development in small ghost towns, right? Or in communities that there's just not a lot of entry-level jobs. So Digital Works has something where families contract through this company, and they're working for Xerox and IBM and Apple, and it's a call center thing, but they start out at
Sure.
$12 to $14 an hour. If they stay, it goes up to 18 to 23.
Yeah.
And really looking at bringing money in from all over the world to smaller communities. And so those are some of the provocative conversations that Circles USA has with communities where there's not a lot of jobs. How do we rethink this so that families in poverty can stay where their roots are,
Right.
and we can grow not only that family but the whole community.
Yes.
So
That is awesome. I think it is truly amazing.
I'm sorry. We're good. You keep talking. I'm messing things up over here.
Oh, it's fine.
I'll deal with that in a little bit. So sorry. So Rebecca, I don't know how you came to be at ESDAC, but she came into one of our staff meetings and started talking to us. And Kevin Honeycutt and I both happened to be at that staff meeting, and we were like, that's our sister. This is somebody we know.
Yeah.
And what she's saying is great, and it's definitely a diamond in the rough. And we sat down and we talked. And it's just a diamond, right?
I was just thinking, these are the people to help you tell your story.
Yeah.
And help teach you how to tell your story. And how to broaden the whole.
She's been an amazing student. She just jumped right in and said, this is important because it is important.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch her start to think, okay, now how do I get this in my knowledge base? Because her knowledge base is, it's immense and it's undeniable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say that she doesn't know what she's talking about when she talks about people who live in poverty.
Exactly.
And what we think and feel and that sort of thing. And so she has been fun to watch because going out and speaking and now working enough that your regular job is starting to say, hey, am I right with that?
Well, it's been amazing. Like I've got to so I just work a lot more hours. So if I'm gone 2 days a week doing consulting and presenting, I just have to pull 40 hours plus those 2 days. And so, it's because my job was like, and I think they got scared, really. Like,
well, because she's in demand. She is speaking. Are you, if you could, because, the full time, I know that you'd be out on the road almost as much as Kevin and me. Because her message is that powerful. And not only does she come in and talk to folks, but she really wants to stay and really make change happen and has developed and overnight it felt like a simulation. There are other simulations out there, but we sat down and I said, guys, I know nothing about poverty simulation, nothing. All I know is to ask dumb questions. And she and I didn't even hardly ask any of those. And she says, well, this and this and this. And next thing I know, she's got her own developed and running it now. Tell us about some of the simulations.
So poverty simulation is really designed to help educators. So when they go through it, it's 4 15-minute weeks in poverty. So it's a month in poverty.
Okay.
So and when educators get done, they come out and they're angry, and some of them say that they're feeling pretty hopeless, depressed, experiencing despair, anxiety, very frustrated. So they're really feeling the emotions that families in poverty feel every day. And they're like, this whole thing's rigged against us, which is kind of how families in poverty feel about life. And so really helping them get into those shoes. And one of the biggest reasons that I do that is that I run that simulation is to really help educators. I think it's easy sometimes to think that families in poverty don't value education, and that's really not true.
Right.
I always say, it's not that families in poverty are anti-education, it's just that they're pro-survival.
Right.
And so, and what I think that a lot of times people think, well, they're just at home kind of watching some TV show, some daytime talk show, and eating bonbons, and that's not true. Most people are very busy surviving in poverty.
Sure.
They don't have the time to think their way out, and so that poverty simulation really helps with that. And teachers, they start to blow off IEPs to keep the lights on. They start leaving their kids at CPS because they're like, at least they're fed, and so they really start to understand that everything that parents do in poverty is for the kids, but the kids are kind of like almost an afterthought because you're so busy trying to just take care of your necessities, because you always think, where's the strong, supportive, caring adult?
Right.
How come, you're not there to buffer the toxic stress for your own children? Well, when you go through that poverty simulation, you start to recognize, we were doing this for the kids, but we weren't doing anything with the kids.
Right.
And we had to blow off some of the most important things that were going to help the kids get where they need to go, which is education and meetings with the teachers and all the rest of those things. And so
it's been really neat watching as she goes through these simulations and the teachers afterward, the things that they say. I had no idea, or this was really.
Oh yeah.
And then after the simulation, it's not like that's it. Then she actually talks and does some debrief with the community, and it's really neat because, again, probably I need my thesaurus today. That it's really, the simulation takes a huge village, doesn't it, to put on?
Yeah. I've worked with several different high school groups, and so we've had high school kids come and run it. One thing that happened by accident that I learned from a district was they had all their paras come in and they played the people in the simulation. So like the banker and the teacher and the jailer and the teachers were the families in poverty. So that was kind of a neat flip, kind of empowering.
Yes.
Because I really don't know if paras necessarily need to go through a poverty simulation. Probably less than more. And then, just really hanging around and igniting conversations in the community, because I also strongly believe that in society has left education, hospital, and police to manage all of our social ills. Communities are just kind of like, yeah, you guys got this,
right.
And that's not realistic. We need communities to step up. We need, there's a ton of faith-based communities out there that really focus inward in their building. And if they will just dare to look out, there's a lot that can be done. In my own community, our church started to, transportation was an issue for certain families. We don't have in-town busing. You have to live so many miles away from the school. And so kids on the west end of town that really have a hard time, they just, when it was cold, they just weren't going to school.
Right.
And it's like, okay, and you can hear all of these different default phrases that people say, but it wasn't solving the problem.
Right.
And so, I listened to teachers, and I went into our faith-based community and said, look, here's the deal. And a lot of the teachers went to our church, it's a big church, and said, what can we do to be part of the solution?
Right.
And now we've got retired people that are on a list. And then they go, and it's just starting, but they go and pick up Johnny or Susie in the morning and get them to school, feed them a granola bar. We've got 2 people that have been through a background check process in our church, going to pick up this kid, meeting the mom. We're building relationships. We're part of the solution. We're not just shoring up our resources to pay for staff in a building to do the same thing we've always done.
Right.
So
that's amazing. That really is.
When the relationship's the big deal.
And the relationship's the big deal. And I know because I was in that community, and it's a primarily middle class community, and I was always that kid from the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
And so, just the idea as a single mom that's really fighting your way through something, if a church says, hey, we want to be a part of helping get your kid to school in the morning, that feels amazing to a parent.
Yeah.
And we make the family go through the school so that they can't just call us directly. They have to access it through the school to build a relationship with the school too.
Yes.
So that everybody's at the table of this kid's process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
So I'm just going to jump in and just pretend I'm one of you guys. I told you I was going to co with you sometime, didn't I? Just co-present or co-host.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm sure you
jumping in
told
here.
us.
So sorry.
I'm sure you told us you were going to do that.
I'm sure I did. Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm not invited. I know. What makes your work, though, Rebecca, different? Because it is different than what Ruby Payne does. And how is it different? Because everybody knows Ruby Payne. How's your work similar or different from what she does? If you don't mind sharing that.
I guess for me, because I come from the trailer park, the work that I do is it's more. I think Ruby Payne's work. I love her stuff. I mean, I really do. I'm a big fan of it. But I think her work is more community and education centric, and my work is more families and poverty centric, and then we draw these other players into the narrative.
Sure.
And so that's what makes circles amazing. Like when our families go through circles, they get called a circle leader, and we say they're the leader of their own lives. They're going to be the leader of the circle with their allies. They're going to eventually be a leader in the community. And so really empowering families in poverty to come and do with us in a process instead of having, a model that does 2 or 4.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that would be my thinking would be the difference, is that I think I'm just more poverty centric versus her coming out of a place where she was coming from an educator standpoint or a community standpoint, and middle class. I mean, she's generationally middle class, and so she always is going to have that, which is very important. But
Yeah, but it's the same as if I'm going to listen to real blues, I'm going to listen to John Lee Hooker and not John Mayer. Although he's great, but I want to hear the real thing. Does that make sense?
It does to me because I know music a lot.
Yeah.
I know too. Yeah, I do.
Good.
But you see, that's the difference, and that's what I hear exactly what you're saying. And the interesting thing that happens is that as if you were to have those that have a heart transplant are then on board with heart transplants from then on. And those families of poverty that move into the middle class are then on board to make sure that they're not the only family that comes along. It's a big difference. And you're right, what she does is great, but it's coming from a whole different direction to get to the same conclusion. But yours is a little more to the heart and deep.
And I've got a lot of something I openly share with educators when I go into their building is alcoholism and drug addiction that I went through for years, and really kind of unpack that with them. And so I really get vulnerable, and I've prayed a lot about this, and this is what I really feel like I'm supposed to do, so that I can help put a face to. Because I know that sometimes when I show things from my past, that teachers can see a mom or a dad that they're currently working with, that they're really struggling with. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about my transformation, and it helps give that educator hope that building relationships with these parents, regardless of where they are, is going to be the better outcome for Johnny or Susie versus trying to distance or even maybe sometimes unintentionally condemn.
Right.
Right.
And that's the hook for every parent, from poverty to wealth.
Yep.
Is that any addiction, anything that parent has, that it all ties to the key is their child. And they're either there because they can't and they want to, or they need to. And that's what makes that's where your story has to be told. That's where your device has to come from, that area. That's the win right there. And it's actually very simple, but it's not also, and you know that. But there's the beauty of it. I mean, that's the key. That's how you make this whole thing happen. Because addiction and anything that we do is about, because I can't do in this area, and I'm trying to numb that pain, and I'm trying to get through that, and that's the key.
Yeah.
And when teachers know that, but there's the thing, the teachers need to be reminded of that, because when you're herding cats all day, 20 of them, you can get numb to some things because you have to. Otherwise, you go home every day and you cry for 3 hours.
And you love those kids so much too. It's easy to get mad at their parents.
Yeah.
You don't understand what you're seeing and why you're seeing it if it's not culturally yours.
Right.
Because there's problems in every culture of poverty,
sure.
middle class, and wealth. I mean,
Sure.
we've all got issues, and they just are culturally different. But if you don't understand the culture and where that's coming from, it's easy to lose that compassion piece and just say, well, those parents don't love their kids.
Right.
And I got to work with some high school students, and it was fun. We were really unpacking stuff from poverty and middle class, and then we worked on wealth. And I started talking to these kids, and I'm like, so okay, looking at all these different types of families, do they all love their kids? And they said, well, families in poverty and middle class love their kids, but wealthy people don't love their kids. And so we sat and talked about that, because there were kids in the room that were from poverty, and there were kids that were from wealth, but they didn't know any wealthy people, or from middle class, but there weren't kids from wealth.
Yeah.
And so the wealthy people weren't represented. And so it was easy to say, oh, well, no, wealthy people's parents, they don't love kids. They just love their jets and their, and it's like, no, at the end of the day, everybody loves their kids,
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's fun stuff.
Yeah. That's very cool.
I think we've got something going here.
I'm excited.
I'm excited for you.
My whole life, all this, I was flying here today, this morning, and really honestly, like, it's divine that Kevin and Ginger showed up in my life, and they said, come this way, and they put their arms around me, and and so I've had this, like, it's kind of like a Forrest Gump story. I mean, that's what it's turning into.
Well, you are in Savannah.
Just like peas and carrots.
Oh my God. That is
Hey,
awesome.
thanks for coming by.
Thank you.